your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray.
Welcome to the Christian Car Guy Radio Show.
I say this calls for action, and now.
Like a lion we roar, we're in it together, join hand in hand. United we stand. It's moments like this, with our backs to the wall, that we're strongest of all, strongest of all, strongest of all.
Think and grow rich for 2025, the seamless garment. And there's more, and there's more. The wisdom that built the automobile business can build the church in 2025. I guess you're probably wondering what all that means, and I hope to make that clear. I really do. But you can't help but just love those two songs. I really do. The Wren Collective did that, Build Your Kingdom Here, and we certainly want to do that in 2025. And then Yaakov Shwinky, that's actually an Israeli song about their battle currently in, it's pretty cool but the idea is united we stand. And when you think about that whole idea of united we stand, there's a phenomenal amount of wisdom in that. And, I guess I've been unpacking that idea most of my adult life. And I think all of us have. It's like, what is wisdom, Bob? And so speaking of United We Stand, we actually have the dream team here on the Christian Car Guy Show today. I have both Bob and Jerry in the same time with me, because often it's Bob and Jerry, but no Robbie, or it might be Bob and no Jerry. And, here we go.
We are together, and this is awesome. It always works out well.
And indeed, if you were in the studio with us, the power I feel in this room, because I know the power of these two gentlemen is God in them, but what God does through them, he has done for the Christian Car Guy Show over the years. It just blows my mind. So, in the book Think and Grow Rich by Andrew Carnegie, he wrote of several industrialists. And that idea of thinking and grow rich, although it was titled that, I guess is sort of a come on for people to think about that they could make money. But the real idea of the book was to grow spiritually and really get the wisdom that Solomon was talking about that cries in the streets, right? And everybody wants that. Like, what was it that allowed Andrew Carnegie to build what he built? What was the wisdom that allowed Henry Ford, to put essentially Detroit to work? There were thousands and millions of people that were put to work in Andrew Carnegie steel mills, and there were millions of people that were put to work in Henry Ford's, assembly line that allowed them to build cars that, eventually obviously changed America, made us the great country that actually could take on Hitler in World War II and Japan and all the stuff that happened because we had some wisdom that we were built on. So what is that wisdom? Well, I was doing a lot of studying this week. Bob just looks at me like, here we go.
You always bring it full circle for me. I have no doubt that you'll do that again.
So what I was studying, and I've got to go down this trail to kind of just give you an idea. What I was studying did not have to do with wisdom originally. It just had to do with Jesus grew. At the end of the Christmas story in Luke chapter 2, it essentially says that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and favor with God and man. That's a really cool thing. And I want that in 2025, don't you? I want to grow in wisdom. I want to grow in stature. I want to grow in favor with God and man, of course.
I certainly hope so. And go ahead. I'm not going to. I was fixing to go down a different trail there, but it's just, I think too many times we, as Christians, kind of lose sight of that. Is that our growing is every day we're growing, and sometimes we can think, I've achieved. I'm where I need to be. But God says, nah, if we look back at that
No,
Paul's
we got-
messages,
no.
you know what? It's a journey, it's a race, and it's till the end. And we're called to.
Right. And a lot of time we're in the wilderness, we get really thirsty.
Well, I've had it said to me, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Right.
And it's sometimes I wonder, is my growth spurt over?
No.
Is there another growth?
Oh, it's
spurt
going on
in
for
my
eternity.
Yeah, can we
future?
answer that for you, Bob?
Well, I'm not talking
No.
about my belt line. The Christmas eating has made me grow there. But, you know, I have periods in my life where I'm really close. And then I have times where I'm not nearly as close. And, you know, something happens. And I hate to say it, but some of the closest times was after trauma and stuff. And I'm not wishing for trauma, but I see the past impacts it's had in my life.
Right. Well, you know, I thought about it this week that, you know, if you follow history of Israel, you know, they would get close to God and then they would think, I've got it from here. And they'd find themselves under the Philistines, or they'd find themselves on the Moabites, whoever. Somebody'd come in and invade them until they figured out, they'd turn back to God. And then they'd be good for a little bit. And then they'd go off again and take care of them. And it's a cycle like that. But it takes that sometimes to tell us, oh, yeah, I can't. God rigged the world. He rigged it so that we cannot do it without him. And, you know, we can go the easy way or we can go the hard way. But either way, you know, you can develop a 2025 where you have a plan to have a daily intake of water, or he will make you thirsty. So that you know you got to have it. And that water is Jesus. Jesus is the Word, and the Word is living water in so many different ways. And the more you drink of it, the closer you get to Jesus, the more you fall in love with Jesus, you know, the more fruit that you can have. This is some of the fruit I want to talk about is wisdom. Okay. Wisdom, the very first mention of it in the Bible has to do with the priestly garment. It's in Exodus 28. And it talks about that these women, or the artisans that are going to make these garments, it requires great wisdom. Why would it take great wisdom? Well, just think about it. How are you going to, and Bob just asked me right before the show, well, how do you make a seamless garment? In other words, a priestly garment like the one Jesus wore right before he went up on the cross that they took off of him was seamless. Well, how does that exactly work? It takes wisdom, right? And I know how it works. I can see the circular, you know, type of thing that they built in order to create a garment that's seamless. But now the sleeves become a particular issue, and they make it difficult beyond my wisdom. So it's going to take some wisdom in order to make this seamless garment. Okay. But again, as I told you earlier, we're going to make reference to Henry Ford, and we're going to make reference to Andrew Carnegie, that they had great wisdom that put this country to work. And the idea of seamless is critical to the idea. It's wisdom. That if you are a visionary like Henry Ford or Andrew Carnegie, if you can take that vision and you can get everybody on the same page, then you and make it seamless, and everybody's going in the same direction, you can put millions of people to work like Andrew Carnegie did, like Henry Ford did. Right? Henry Ford built the assembly line so that it would be so simple that, okay, oh, I get it. I'm supposed to put this nut on. Every single time this wheel comes up, I'm going to put that lug nut on. And I got it. I can put 5 lug nuts on and I'm good to go. And the car goes down the road, right? He made it seamless. He made it easy for them to do. Same thing with Andrew Carnegie with steel, right? He had groups of people that made the pourings. He had groups of people that you know, added the coke, that did all the things, you know, and he organized it in such a way that everybody knew what the main thing was. And once they got all on the same page, then they could really turn out a bunch of steel. Well, that steel, as we talked about, was great wisdom.
I was watching a movie one time, and they would get a sample of the steel and take it to the lab or something. But there was a guy there that would tell them what it was from his previous knowledge before they even took it to the lab. But they took it to the lab anyway. But he was right. He just knew from the experience.
So what I want to do is relate this to your own experience. As we move into 2025, if we could all be seamless builders, right? Who do you know in your life? Who do you remember that built a team, whether it was at work, a coach, somebody that made it where everybody got together and everybody contributed? What did that look like in your life? 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
To the consumer, Christmas Day is the end. To the believer, it's only the beginning.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus.
'Twas the day after Christmas, and all through the world the shepherds were spreading his glorious word. Good news of the Savior in the fullness of time, born in a manger to redeem mankind. The Prince of Heaven would go to the cross to purchase salvation and ransom the lost. Alive from the grave, the King would emerge in victorious power. He'll one day return. Friends, that's my poem, 'Twas the Day After Christmas, and I hope you will join me and those shepherds, and let's go tell it on the mountain. The time to tell the world about Jesus is now. He has come, and he's coming again, and that's good news today. Christmas forever.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus. Available now in bookstores, or go online to firstwordsofjesus.com.
This is McGruff the Crime Dog, and I need you to help me take a bite out of crime. Counterfeit products are popping up everywhere. Fake sneakers, fake cosmetics, and even fake pills. Crooks are selling counterfeit versions of just about everything. Last year, billions of dollars worth of counterfeit products were sold in the U.S. Sure, it may seem like saving a few bucks on the things you want isn't a big deal, but counterfeits are usually made in unsafe conditions, potentially using hazardous and even lethal ingredients that could harm you and others. And the money you've paid, it goes right into the hands of criminals and may support child labor, drugs, and even gangs. Smells like big crime to me. So if you still think buying fake products is harmless, think again. And remember, if you don't know where the products came from, how could you know where the money goes? You're smart, buy smart. Go for real. Learn more at mcgruffpsa.org. This message is brought to you by the United States Patent and Trademark Office and the National Crime Prevention Council.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
A listener writes, Gary, my husband and I are in counseling for an affair he had in the past. Is it still right to be intimate with him during this process? I don't want to discourage him from his feelings toward me.
When you've been betrayed in that your spouse has been unfaithful to you, and then they come back and are trying to rebuild the relationship, it takes time to work through the pain and the sense of betrayal that's there. I wouldn't want to push the sexual part of the relationship, but I do feel like that when you come to the place where you can do it without feeling used, that it is a positive part of the healing process. Because a healthy marriage is going to have a sexual aspect. And there has to be a measure of healing, I think, before you can enter back into that kind of intimacy. But I do think it's an important part of the process.
Dr. Gary Chapman is the author of The 5 Love Languages. For more answers, visit startmarriageright.com.
This is Carter Conlon. In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus spoke to the people of Capernaum, his hometown. And he warned them that despite their prosperity, they'd be brought down to hell because they did not respond to the miracles and works of God that had been done there. Jesus compared Capernaum to Sodom and said that if the same miracles had been done in Sodom, it would have been spared. Think about that. Capernaum witnessed the dead being raised to life, the healing of incurable diseases, the defeat of demonic powers, and the call to follow Jesus. The point here is that God desires mercy and restoration rather than judgment. The miracles in Capernaum were a testament to God's mercy and power. Today we can learn from this. Let's respond now to the mercy and grace of God by choosing to follow Jesus, experiencing his supernatural provision, and extending his mercy to others. Ask him for strength. It's time now to pray.
Like a lion we roar, we're in it together, join hand in hand. We are having a fair, united
like this.
Think and Grow Rich in 2025. That's the seamless garment. The wisdom that built the automobile business could help build the church, right, in 2025. And so it, the question is that I posed right before the break is, who have you known in your life that had that capability of unity, right? And it's fascinating to me on the idea of unity that in Mark chapter 12, verse 28, Jesus answering the Pharisee who had asked him, what's the first commandment? He said, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord. That's unity, right? And love the Lord thy God with all their heart, and with all their soul, and all their strength. In other words, that's all one. That's the Shema. It's in from Deuteronomy, and it is a combined idea of unity of love for God. And if you have a unity of love for God, guess what? You're going to love people because God's in those people. And during the break, Jerry had talked about this idea of those great leaders had faith. And I want you to talk about that in a minute. But before you talk about that, I want to remind people that, this is a live show. And one of the greatest aspects of it from Robbie Dilmore's point of view is you listening that call in and share. It's just like during the break, Jerry shared this and my eyes just opened like ka-ching. That's exactly right. Well, you probably have something of somebody that you observed when you were a kid that had that ability. We want you to call 866-348-7884. Maybe it was a boss. Maybe it was a coach. 866-348-7884. Jerry?
Yeah. Before I explain that, I just want to, when you said that, somebody who could think of, I had a couple coaches through the years, and I think about, how they were able to convey what they were wanting and bringing people together, and how much better as a team you are when everybody works as one. But also it made me think about Danny Spainhour, our missions minister at Pinedale.
He's one of those.
He is one of those. And when we go on a mission trip, I mean, we will bring people who, some of them are there because of, I really don't know why to start with, but he's able to get everybody to form and be one unit and have one purpose and stuff. And then what happens on those trips is just utterly amazing. And then it's sometimes the most amazing part isn't with the people or the place we were at. It's the change I see in the people that went because they bought into what Danny was selling. I mean, and that's pretty powerful.
I mean, and but to get back to the other thing you were talking about, which is that attribute that Henry Ford had, Moses had, David had it. Certainly, David.
You look all the way down. Ford, Carnegie, Roosevelt. I mean, you name them, they all have it. You look at the pillars in the Bible and stuff. They had it also, and that's faith. They had to be sold out for what they thought their mission was, and hopefully, it's one that not only being sold out, but also you had to convey that and have the wisdom to know that to transfer that to the people that needed to carry it out, because they didn't necessarily carry it out. They brought it forward, and then they put it in, trusted it into other people to believe what they were saying and to buy into it. And also by having faith, you had to also be able to withstand the ridicule, because whenever, I don't care if you're learning how to reprocess steel, beat out a fender and put paint on, take parts off in a salvage yard, or the way you do a broadcast, if you don't have faith in it, it's not going to succeed. But also, if you can't withstand the criticism to know you're doing the right thing, it's not going to succeed. So,
might run into a naysayer or two along the way.
Well, obviously,
there's one on every corner almost, if you really look.
Yeah.
You know, I think about blind Bartimaeus, one of my favorite stories in the Bible, right? Like, he's like, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And they're all like, shut up, you blind beggar, shut up. And he goes, no, you shut up. Jesus, son of David. It didn't matter how many times they told him to shut up, you know, and he was the one that stopped. Jesus stopped not to talk to the people that were saying, shut up, by the way. They stopped to talk to Bartimaeus, because what Bartimaeus had faith, right? He had faith that Jesus would help him. He had faith in the whole deal. And that's what it's exactly what it takes. But the other thing that I've noticed about great leaders is they had faith in me. The ones that I've had in my life, right? I think about a basketball coach I had in 8th grade. He went undefeated for like 7 years in a row because He not only had faith in his systems and what he was teaching, but he had faith in every player. He would figure out what their gifting was. Like my case, he could see Robbie cannot dribble. Robbie, don't dribble. Just don't dribble. But man, you can rebound. Go here. This is how you make the outlet pass. And he taught me all the things to do with the skills that I had. And then he would build on that because he recognized what greatness was in everybody, because everybody has it. And then he had faith in that, okay, this is how we're going to make you all that you can be. Right. But it's like putting a round peg in a round hole. If you see that person can't dribble, you tell them, don't dribble. Robbie, you're 6'5" tall. You put the ball, every time you put it on the ground, the ball's bouncing 15 feet in the air. Anybody can steal it. That kind of thing. So when you think about that in your life, seriously, I want you to call because I want to hear your wisdom, right? Or maybe you have a favorite wisdom verse that speaks to this in your mind. 866-348-7884. We're looking for you to bring out the best in us, right? That idea of 2025, we move forward with wisdom. And how does that apply to the church, right? To have faith in those other members, to get on the same page, to bring out the best. And obviously, nobody was better than Jesus, right? And when you think about the concepts that we're talking about, getting everybody on the same page, all 12 of them, right? And they were like me, kind of clunky.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
They couldn't dribble.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, you're being told, follow me, follow my commands. I've showed you the path, but you're going to be persecuted. The world's going to turn on you. You're going to face persecution you can't even imagine. And they all said, okay, I'm game.
Bring it.
I'm in. And I'm sure everybody out there listening has a story of somebody that has been that in their life, or they've been that in somebody else's life. And as you said, Robbie, those stories are what encourage other people. So, man, if you're sitting on that great story, don't sit on
share
it.
it because somebody may need that to help their employee or be helped, however that works. 866-348-7884. We're talking wisdom today and wisdom for the church in 2025. We'll be right back, but we need your call. Call us.
We listen to the Truth Network. TruthNetwork.com.
To the consumer, Christmas Day is the end. To the believer, it's only the beginning.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus.
'Twas the day after Christmas, and all through the world the shepherds were spreading his glorious word. Good news of the Savior in the fullness of time, born in a manger to redeem mankind. The Prince of Heaven would go to the cross to purchase salvation and ransom the lost. Alive from the grave, the King would emerge in victorious power. He'll one day return. Friends, that's my poem, 'Twas the Day After Christmas. And I hope you will join me and those shepherds, and let's go tell it on the mountain. The time to tell the world about Jesus is now. He has come, and he's coming again. And that's good news today. Christmas forever.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus. Available now in bookstores, or go online to firstwordsofjesus.com.
Hi, I'm Barry McGuire, the author of Ignite Your Life, and I'm here to explain how you can defeat fear effortlessly. There's never been a Christmas in America like this one. No matter where you live in America today, evil is happening all around you. Satan is having a field day with God's permission to get America's attention. Over 80% of Americans are now living in fear, with 40% of Americans believing we're living in the last days. This is unprecedented, a mind-boggling opportunity to move every lost person in your life this Christmas closer to Jesus. The lost are beginning to understand that they're lost. Over 80% of the unchurched know the world is out of control, are hoping there's a God who can end the chaos, and are literally looking for somebody to tell them. This is what the scriptures describe as the fields being white for harvest. They are that and more, and God is calling you into his immediate service, and this is your great opportunity to fulfill it from now until we see him face to face. If you want to ignite your life, go to igniteamerica.com.
Here's Dr. Robert Jeffress with today's Pathway Minute.
What was true 2,000 years ago is still true today. Wise men still seek him, and when they find him, they worship him with all of their hearts. When you come to believe in your life that Jesus is really who he said he is, he's not just a good moral teacher. He's not just a religious leader. He is the Son of God who came and died and rose again that you can have eternal life. The only logical response is to accept his gift of salvation and to dedicate your life to following him, whatever the cost.
You're listening to Dr. Robert Jeffress, Bible teacher on Pathway to Victory. For information and helpful resources, go to ptv.org.
No other person who's ever lived would be as unique as he. But the fact is, he looked just like another Jew. Hi, I'm Chuck Swindoll. You see, if you cut Jesus, he bled. If you insulted Jesus, well, he hurt. And when you smashed a crown of thorns on his forehead, it brought anguish. When you nailed him to a cross, he died. He willingly gave up his life. He knew it when he came. The shadow of the cross covered him from start to finish of his life. God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, that he might redeem us. He might have looked just like anybody else, but he was like none other.
Pastor and teacher Chuck Swindoll. Visit Insight for Living's website at insight.org.
We are your church. We are the home on earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness clear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your
Think and grow rich for 2025. The seamless garments over the wisdom that built the automobile business that can build the church in 2025. All that to say that, man, unity. I mean, when we come together, it's just the opposite of what happened at Babylon, right? They came together, got themselves in trouble. So God confused our language. Well, by unconfusing our language and by getting on the same page, we can do almost anything, especially when it comes to things of God, right? If God's on our side, here we go. And so there's been people like that in your life that had that ability to cast a vision, to get people on the same page, like a Henry Ford, or like that was that coach, that, or maybe it was a parent, or maybe it was a Boy Scout leader, right? It could have been a boss. And I've seen some great bosses over the years. I've seen some that weren't so great. But interestingly, I don't know if you ever heard this about Bear Bryant. I always loved it. They said that part of the reason that he was such a great coach, or he may have said it, he said, I could take your team and make them beat my team, or I could take my team and make them beat your team. In other words, it was a matter of bringing out the best in all the players, getting them on the same page. It wasn't that those individuals had some miraculous amount of talent more than the other ones. It's just figuring out which one can do what, and then making sure you bring out the best and encourage them and don't discourage them, right? And faith, as Jerry talked about, is a gigantic aspect of it all.
I had a guy I worked for at RJ Reynolds in the print shop, and I worked second shift, and there was a first shift, and there was a little competitive nature in the people and everything. But that man was so smart. He would come to me on the tough jobs, said, them boys on first don't think you can handle this one. And he just knew how to push that button and get everything Bob had at his, he could draw the best out of me. And he knew how to push my little button and get that very best job I could provide. And that was one of the smartest men I ever worked for.
Yeah. And so how about you? I know you got that thing rolling around in your brain. You could encourage all of us. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. The thing that made the light come on for me when I finally began to understand the concept I'm trying to explain today was Charles Schwab was one of Andrew Carnegie's main guys. He you think he's somebody that was a financial guy. He wasn't. He was a steel man, and he was in charge of all the steel mills. And one day he came into the lowest producing steel mill in all of Andrew Carnegie's massive amount of steel mills. And when he got in there, the first thing he did was he walked up to the foreman. He went in there about 3 a.m. And when the second or third shift was coming off and the next shift was coming on, and he said, "How many pourings of steel did you guys make last night?" And the guy said 6. And he took a piece of chalk, and you can imagine this big shop floor. It's concrete, right? And he writes a big 6 on the middle of the floor and just walks out of the plant. To your point, Bob, right? So you can imagine, here comes the next shift. It's like, what's that 6 in the middle of, oh, Charles Schwab's in there, the big boss. And that's how many pourings of steel we made last night. Well, you can imagine that next shift now knew what the idea was. Like, they better get 7 pourings, right? And of course, that was what happened. And the next shift came on. What's that? Oh, and then they came to understand what the main thing was to pour steel, right? And within a month, that was the number 1 producing steel plant in Andrew Carnegie's, right? It wasn't the people, it wasn't the facilities, it was a matter of everybody understanding and being competitive, right?
Yep.
Like, we
have that competitive nature.
We're going to beat that. And so in the car business for years and years and years, we always had boards that show who was the leader, who had the most cars out, who had the most gross profit, all those things are just boards. And they do the same thing in the church. I don't know if I completely agree with it, but nonetheless, they do. Like, how many baptisms did you get last year? How many members? There's things that do things like that. Understanding here's where the fruit is, what that might look like, and how we doing, or how do we measure up, so to speak. Has to
analytics.
Analytics. There you go. And websites and all that stuff to use that competitive idea, but that only goes so far, right? Because if you don't give people the tools, really to help them with what really is fruitful, then
Well, Bob, Robbie and Bob, I'm gonna share something, because I go back a few years, and I think what we're talking about just made me sit here just now. I just realized somebody else I should mention. Jesus' labor of love concept of that. Robbie felt God had laid that on his heart to start that ministry for widowed mothers and that needed help with cars and stuff. And early on, I think when it was in the infant stage, Robbie wanted to meet with me and Bob for lunch one day, and this is down at a little restaurant, I think at Gumtree and 109, if I'm not wrong. But we go in there, and I don't know, I may be speaking out of turn, but I'm going to tell you what I felt. Robbie laid out the plan of what God had put on his heart as far as a ministry to help single moms with automobiles, transportation, repairs, or trying to get them if they get donated. But it was just a concept at that time. But when Robbie was explaining it to me and Bob, one thing that was obvious, and that was his passion for it, his faith that he had that God had put that in front of him, that it would work. As I'm sitting there, I'm trying to think how it was going to work. But I believe in Robbie. I believe in his vision. I believe that God put it on his heart, and I believe in his passion for it. And also, I believe that Robbie wouldn't be beat down by other people criticizing, saying it couldn't be done. So I walked out of there, and I may have even told Bob, that's one of the craziest ideas I've ever heard. I don't see how in the world that's going to work, but I'm in. And that was why I was in, is because of your passion and your faith, and you're willing to share, convey that what God had put on your heart. And that may have just been me, but I was scratching my head. And as
I was all in right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I had to do a little head scratching and soul searching and everything. But like I say, when you come across with the idea, there was no doubt. There was no, you were in wholehearted. You was going to do it with or without us. You'd appreciate the help, but it was your commitment.
I appreciate the help.
Your commitment to that was so obvious that day, and it made it easier. I didn't grasp it right that second, but you gave me a rock to stand on, and it's done very well.
Yeah, we've had by far and away our biggest year. You know, I think financially we've had more donations than we've ever had. I know we've had more cars donated. We've given away more cars. We've given away more money. You know, it's good that it comes in, it goes out. And you know, a big part of that is Danny Spainheier, you know, with your church. You know, they donated 2 of the cars, and they have us in their budget now, and we get you know, stuff from them every month. But it's amazing. And then we added the hurricane relief. But you know, when you think back to that whole time, which, believe it or not, guys, I mean, I'm thinking this was 2010.
Woo!
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah. So it was like 14 years ago. It was a while.
Yeah.
And wow. Yeah, wow. And we hadn't done it long when that lady came in with the air conditioning problem.
Yeah.
And as long as I live, I will never forget that. Tell that story, Jerry.
Yeah, because sometimes when we first were getting off the ground and stuff, there wasn't that many facilities and stuff that were volunteering their time and stuff. So I was just locally trying to at least fill a gap, and it may be stuff I wasn't even, or didn't even have the people that were in our line of business, but I know a little bit about cars. And so I had this woman, and she contacted Robbie, and her husband had passed away, and it was the middle of summer. I think it was one of those days it was 100 degrees. And she's talking about her air conditioner didn't work in her car, hadn't worked for over a year. And just the heat was more than she could stand. And she wasn't a young lady. Well, she comes in and pulls in and tells me, says, I've talked to Robbie Dillmore and Jesus Labor of Love, and I'm the woman that has the air conditioning problem. So I go out there and I sit in the car, and I said, let's just turn it on and see what we have here. And she's talking about, see how it just blows out hot air. And we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, wait a second here. And I mashed this button that has a snowflake on it. Boom, instantly cool air. And she says, how'd you fix that? I said, that little button right there. If you'll mash that thing, you'll have air.
Be thou healed, brother.
Well, the genius of what God did with that for me was that, man, I'll explain that when we come back, but we need your stories. When did God lead you?
You're listening to the Truth Network. TruthNetwork.com.
From Love Worth Finding, here's Adrian Rogers with a treasure from the Word.
One of the things I remember perhaps more than anything else out of my youth, after God called me to preach as a young boy, and I didn't come from a household of preachers. My dad was not a preacher. My dad and I were saved the same night. I didn't come from a particularly religious type of family. But God reached down and God called me to preach. And I told my folks and everybody I knew that God had called me to preach. And I remember being one time in my bedroom, and my father had a friend of our family's. They were sitting out there on the patio talking. This was a man that I admired and respected very much. And this man said to my father, what's Adrian going to do when he gets out of high school? My dad said, well, he wants to go off to college and study to be a preacher. And that man just laughed, and he said, he won't make it. He'll never stick it out. He'll quit. That went into my heart like a poison arrow. I almost felt like crying. He won't make it. You know, friends, that hurts. That's what the world says. You know, they won't stick it out. They won't make it. You see, the devil hasn't changed his tactics. Not at all. He's still mocking. He's still laughing. And you, if you don't work for God, you might as well get ready. You're going to face some ridicule.
For more about Love Worth Finding and Adrian Rogers, visit our website at lwf.org.
Each word is a testimony.
A million miles of my mistakes, so couldn't keep your love away. However far away I am from home, that's how far your love will go.
And his word is always true on the Truth Network.
Hi, I'm Johnny Erickson Tata. The other day, my husband Ken and I were reading through 1 Thessalonians, and I was trying ever so hard to focus on his words. But I had been in pain all day long. I was feeling weary of battling so much discomfort. But then, just as I was fighting to keep focus, Ken read those wonderful words describing the glorious return of Jesus and his holy ones. I listened to my husband read that one day, soon there'll be a great shout. It'll be the voice of an archangel, and a trumpet will sound, and we will be with the Lord forever. My heart suddenly found strength. But the kicker was the Apostle Paul's comment at the close. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. So today, if your trials feel overwhelming, if your pain is encroaching, be encouraged with the good news of Christ's soon return. And then go out and encourage someone else with the same good news that Jesus is coming back.
Looking in the self-help sections of online bookstores, you will find thousands of titles in every conceivable category of life. People hope that the next book they read will contain the answers they are looking for. Interestingly, nearly 400 years ago, a Christian philosopher named Blaise Pascal said, "All the good principles already exist in the world. We just fail to apply them." And 1,600 years before Pascal, the Apostle Paul wrote that the Word of God is able to thoroughly equip us for everything in life through instruction and correction. But instead of being a self-help book, the Bible is a God-help book. Even better. This is David Jeremiah, encouraging you to get on the road to new life. Discover God's principles for living on Route 66.
Route 66, driving the word home. Log on to Route66Life.com. Start your journey home today.
I think anxiety actually offers an opportunity because it actually says, okay, if I can actually name the loss that I'm feeling that is triggering this anxiety, I can imagine that loss.
This is Focus on the Family Minute with Curtis Chang.
And then can you imagine going through that loss and having the resurrection on the other side where that loss is restored to us? So if I'm fearing the loss of a job and the economic insecurity, can I imagine going through that and the resurrection day when the feast is laid out on the Mount Zion where there's no want, there's no need anymore, right? So I think there is actually something here to cultivate the Christian imagination for what happens on the other side of loss, which is a beautiful picture of bodily resurrection and the restoration of all things.
More encouragement from Curtis at FamilyMinute.org.
Like a lion we roar, we're in it together, join hand in hand. United we stand. It's moments like this, with our backs to the wall, that we're strongest of all, strongest of all, strongest of all.
I love that last line in that song where it says, it's moments like this when our backs are against the wall. Like you talked about when the fire happened or other things happen in our business, right? That we become united. And I'll never forget one of the first interviews I ever did on Truth Talk years ago. This is probably 2008 or something like that. I was interviewing these people that they were Christians in Lebanon, and they had been involved in the war that had happened like in 2002 or 4. It wasn't the current one at all. And he said, it was funny, Robbie, where we were in Lebanon, it was completely denominational. In other words, they had the Catholics over there and the Church of Christ over here, and the Baptists were over there, and the Presbyterians and the Congregationalists, and they were all denominations all over the place. He said, but the moment the invasion came, and whatever it was, Sharia law or whatever the people were that were running up, the streets, killing people, then all of a sudden denominations went out the window, and the Catholic Church was the strongest built and the most of a fortress. And so we were all in the Catholic Church and loving it, right? That, all of a sudden,
it was cool to be Catholic.
It was just a matter of these people believe in Jesus versus Allah, and all of a sudden, they united them, and trying to find ways that they could come together. And as they did, they've never been stronger, right? And they survived it because they came together. right? And it really is an idea that, God says, love one another. And even to the point to the Arabs, I mean, it's everybody's involved in that to some extent. If we could get on the same page and obviously help them to see that the only way they can have forgiveness is through Christ. The only way that they can achieve true love is through Christ. In other words, all those things come together in Christ, and he is the ultimate uniter. However, you can't treat them like they're an enemy and expect them to fall in love with you.
We're supposed to we're supposed to be so much like Jesus in that aspect. What did Jesus do? Jesus showed compassion and love for everybody. Did he call out sin? Absolutely. Did he say when it was sin? Absolutely. But did he do it in a compassionate way to bring people to that fellowship? Absolutely. What are we called to do? The same thing. I mean,
right. Right. And so, to get back to the Jesus, labor, love thing. And again, if you have some wisdom on this idea, we definitely want to hear from you. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. We were talking about the Jesus, labor, love, and how God, gave us that vision actually. And Jerry was telling the story about the lady who was suffering through 2 summers. She said this was her second summer not to have air conditioning because, unfortunately her husband had died. And for so many widows without their husband in the house, they don't know a lot about their car. And so the Jesus, labor, love was helpful for them. Single moms in the same boat, especially single moms, in a lot of their cases, they're not getting the help that they need in support from their father, the father of the children. And they're in desperate shape. And as James put it, true in religion is this, single moms, or actually he said widows and orphans, but same kind of thing. And often it's just a matter of not a financial thing. That didn't cost us anything. It cost Jerry, 20 minutes of his time and that kind of thing. But the blessing you got from it lasts a lifetime, right?
Absolutely. And I think when we look for opportunity, it's always there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have a single mom come up who can't figure out how to get the baby seat fastened into the seat. It's something simple like that. And, it's just.
Don't call that simple.
Well, true. That's true.
It took me a little while the first round or two, but now it's pretty.
Once you kind of learn to
learn
the tricks of the trade of how to get that thing.
But I was wanting it so securer than one had ever been, and it took me a minute to get it tweaked, but that was different.
Yeah. So the wisdom that we're talking about clearly, is Jesus was telling us that if we can get on the same page and united we stand, divided we fall, and that's the case in our country. That's the case in our churches. I hate to say it, but if you go into most churches, there's people on one side of the aisle and there's people on the other side of the aisle, and people don't cross that aisle. And that is not what God had in mind. We got Will is in Ohio. So Will, you're on the Christian Car Guy Show. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing today, Robbie?
I couldn't be more excited to hear what you have for us, Will.
Okay, so it will be personal. And so hopefully, people are open to hearing different types of situations to gain a better understanding about unity, because that's what helps me and that's what's helping me.
Good.
So I think, the question was asked, who has or what brings the most unity? And I'll tell you, Robbie, from living the life I've lived, I can at least answer something easier, which is I've been somebody who has brought a great deal of disunity. But then why did I do that? Because I had a bunch of people around me also bringing disunity, close family, relatives. So it was very dysfunctional. I did see bits and pieces within men and women, whether they were in family, in my neighborhood, in the community, that did right, and I could observe and learn. But I thought, why was I so bringing so much disunity? Because I've been taught disunity. So then it's living an entire life that was, littered with problems and issues. We can go into that another day. What brings unity? Well, when I found Christ, I realized the only person that I need to compare myself to was him, right? So then that resolved some of my character. But what about the he or she, whether it was my brother or my sister, my mother or my father, my stepdad, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle, you name the he or she that I would need to have unity with, because God says to love him first and then have unity with them. And he presents you to his son, Jesus, to see how to love. So we only got to think about, well, how does Jesus love? Well, he walked amongst many people, cursed them not. And it never says who all these people were, except for that they were brothers and sisters. So to bring them all together is to realize that every woman and every girl and every man and every boy that we come into contact with is our brother and sister. So I'm going to tell you a short story about my sister. I was growing up so disunified. My sister decided she was going to prostitute herself. And I don't know what was worse, that she was going to do that or that I was accepting that she could do that. And so I tagged along and allowed her to do that. So I thought, well, was it disunity for her to do what she was doing in sight of what God says he came as Jesus to sacrifice himself for, which was for the prostitute and for the beggars and, you know, the poor and the sick and the needy, give them a name. So that's what I did. I allowed her to do that. She did that. I allowed her to do that. And I could really hark myself on how I've caused that kind of disunity, not just in a tight family, but how others also do it with their sisters and daughters and mothers around here. And it's like, you know, I could feel shame, or I could look at Jesus and say, you know what, you sacrificed yourself for all of that, for all that shame and guilt of disunity I brought. How can I bring more unity? And by paralleling with his character, who he said he was, I bring more unity to my she and he, brother and sister, father and mother, grandfather, granddaughter, daughter, son, boy, girl.
I hate we're at the end of the show, Will, because that's some wisdom right there, buddy. And I am just honored that you would call in and share that. But we all got to know. I know everybody's listening. Is your sister better?
I hope so. We haven't had much communication. That if somebody would be able to reach out to her, name's Willadine, interesting name. But if she were better, I would like to talk to her, and then we could talk about how she could get better if she wasn't.
Well, let's pray for Willoughby right this second. Lord, I thank you for Will. I thank you for Willoughby. And I pray for her, Lord, that she would find what Will found in you, and that this would help turn her life back towards you. And I thank you again for Will's call. I thank you for this show, and I thank you for what you're doing in Will's life. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you, Will. I'm so grateful.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Each word is a testimony.
When I needed rescue, Jesus, you came through. Oh, in my hardest season, when I needed rescue, oh, Jesus, you came through.
And his word is always true on the Truth Network.
Hello?
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 Hey,
Can you
yeah, can I speak to Pete?
Yeah, this is.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. My name is Nick. I'm the producer for Kingdom Pursuits, hosted by Robbie Dillmore. How are you doing today?
Good. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. You sound crystal clear. Yeah, we'll be getting the show started within about a minute.
Okay.
And yeah, do you have any questions?
No, were you able to get Jay on also?
You're the first one that I called. I'm about to call him
Okay.
right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Give me 1 sec.
Yep.
Hi, can I speak to Jay?
This is Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Oh.
My name is Nick. I'm the producer for Kingdom Pursuits, hosted by Robbie Dillmore. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. You sound crystal
Great.
clear as well. I also have Pete on the line.
Hey,
Hey, Pete.
Hey.
Very good.
How are you, man?
Good. Get anything this morning?
No, scared one up on the way in, and then had a small doe come toward me, and instead of following the trail where it would have
Hey,
been
gentlemen,
perfect,
sorry to cut it
went around the
short.
other way.
We are
That's
about
okay.
to start, so I'm going to go ahead and mute you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Kingdom Pursuits, where you hear from ordinary people instilled with an extraordinary passion. Together we explore the stories of men and women who take what they love and let God turn their passion into kingdom pursuits. Now, live from the Truth Booth, your host, Robbie Dillmore.
Wow, I can't believe we're already doing the last, Nick, we're doing the last Kingdom Pursuits of 2024. Excited about what God's going to do in 2025, but we're so excited that you've tuned in today to listen. We've got such a show lined up for you. What God has done in 2024 in so many different ways. We have two really neat people I get to talk to. One of them quite often is Pete Berbeles. He is one of my co-hosts on the Christian Car Guy podcast. We do a thing called Horns of Light, and so I just call him Horns of Light Adventures. And so, Pete, welcome to Kingdom Pursuits.
Thank you, Robbie. It's just so good to be here today and to be here with my friend Jay, who just has such a passion for seeing people come to Christ, and just a beautiful life and a beautiful testimony of what God can do when somebody surrenders everything to Him.
Right, and it's neat how God brings all that together in so many different ways, in harmony. Right, he finds people and with their gifting and uses that gifting and obedience. And in my opinion, one of Pete's amazing gifts that he has is the gift of obedience. And in doing that, to just introduce him a little bit, he God told him to go pray in Petra, Jordan. And he's a surveyor out there in Illinois, Kansas, those kind of places, and like, man, all of a sudden God says go pray in Petra, Jordan. And Pete does that. And then when Pete does that, how exciting, God does this miraculous thing, obviously through the prayer and how you felt. But can you take the folks back there for just a minute as we're introducing you, Pete, to what happened there in Petra?
Sure. Yeah. It was basically just, I went and prayed with a friend and had some verses that Arnold Fruchtenbaum felt was related to Petra, Jordan. And at the end of our time of praying those verses, just the presence of God just really came in a very special way. And you could feel it. And just asked a friend to take a photo of and capture this moment and just raise my hands up to heaven to thank the Lord for this adventure. And just as my friend was getting ready to take the picture, a beam of light kind of came down, and he just started laughing and just kept saying, "I hope I'm able to get this on in the photo." And then something along those lines. And then he took the picture, and he was able to capture it. And it was just kind of one of those things that let me on a long trail of many other things and kind of connected us as a result of Habakkuk 3. And there's a story there.
Oh, there's so many stories, but again, just to introduce the idea of like, man, sometimes you just, God sends you on something that seems to not make that much sense at the time, but then in obedience, oh my word, what ends up happening is absolutely spectacular. And that was actually kind of the idea originally behind Kingdom Pursuits, is that so many folks out there, God is, put it on their heart to write a book, or he's put it on their heart to do a movie, or even teach at a Christian camp, or whatever that may be. And they do it. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, God takes that and just takes them on the wildest adventure. They had no idea the joy that would be involved in that. And so our next guest, Jay Peters, with Jesus Revival Now, and they're in Illinois. And Jay, that's exactly what happened to you, right?
Yeah, that sums it up pretty good, Robbie. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, it's so fun. It really is, because you guys are such good friends. And, it's so cool. It really is. As Pete said, nobody loves to hear about fruit more than listeners of Kingdom Pursuits, and hear about people coming to Christ, especially young people. And you're certainly getting to see that in large numbers, right, Jay?
Yes, it's been just amazing. I don't think I've ever seen the hunger that I see right now, I've been doing youth ministry for about 30 years. And what I've seen in the past 5 years, and in the past, I would say the past year, it seems to have increased, especially amongst high school and college. There's a hunger there. They don't always know it's for the Lord, but it's like, once you show them this is what your appetite is for, they're unstoppable. We have some of the kids that we're meeting with. A couple of them live with me, and then we have kids that literally, we're connecting with on a daily basis. And it's nothing, it's not some special program or anything. It's literally reading the Bible, sharing, praying, doing life, and not trying to hype anything up, just giving them, just God is the gospel, right? And it's been incredible, and it's really, really, I feel like so much of what these past 30 years is just preparing for what God is doing now.
And that is so, and so you guys listening, I'm telling you, there are some stories coming your way from both these guys that are really remarkable at what God's done in 2024 as we finish out this show. But neither of these guys are, Nick, I don't think they're ready for what they're about to experience.
Oh boy.
Because they don't know that part of Kingdom Pursuits is shenanigans, right? And so, I had such a topic, I couldn't lay it down, but part of, getting into the whole feel of Kingdom Pursuits is it's time to play, right? Speaking horns.
All right.
Now the fun begins. Now it's time to play shenanigans.
You were wondering. We had a temporary delay, but the idea of shenanigans is always that my listeners get a chance to hear, Robbie's dad jokes / riddles, and then get a chance to call in and win, which is part of what we enjoy doing here on Kingdom Pursuit. So, speaking of horns, as I mentioned, Nick, and of course, if Jay or Pete, you feel like you have an answer to one of these, by all means, jump in, except the last one, which is we want people to call in and win. So why would you put horns on your laptop? Right? If you thought about that, Nick, why would you put horns on your laptop? If you guys feel like chiming in, just go ahead.
Horns on your laptop.
Yeah, it increases its RAM capability.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to tell my kids that one.
Yeah. So
as I'm sitting here in a Dodge Ram truck.
there you go. Yeah. And so, what do you call a battle where the only weapons are truck horns?
The only weapons are truck horns.
Yeah, that would be a fight to the death.
Oh, man.
This one will get you. Why did the Boy Scout decide to call his business fixing horns? What? Excuse me. Did the Boy Scout decide to call his business fixing horns on cars and trucks? He was a Boy Scout. That's helpful. Beep repaired.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
Beep repaired.
Beep repaired. And my personal favorite on my list of corny ones before I get to the actual riddle today is, what did Who the Clown use as his clown horn? What did Who the Clown use as his clown horn?
I have no idea.
Who knows?
Who knows?
So at the end of those shenanigans, you knew I'd actually have a riddle for you to call in and win today. And so if you can answer this riddle, then you can win today from the prize vault. So here's your riddle. What horn is the church waiting to hear sound in 2025? What horn is the church waiting to hear sound in 2025? If you can answer that, Nick, tell them what they'll win.
Yes, they'll be winning a prize from our Kingdom Pursuits prize vault. Just give us a call at 866-348-7884.
Yeah, we got to go to a break. When we get back, we'll get to the actual meat of the subject of what's going on with Jesus Revival Now USA and Horns of Light Adventures. But in the meantime, what horn is the church waiting to hear sound? Call us 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
To the consumer, Christmas Day is the end. To the believer, it's only the beginning.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus.
'Twas the day after Christmas, and all through the world the shepherds were spreading his glorious word. Good news of the Savior in the fullness of time, born in a manger to redeem mankind. The Prince of Heaven would go to the cross to purchase salvation and ransom the lost. Alive from the grave, the King would emerge in victorious power. He'll one day return. Friends, that's my poem, 'Twas the Day After Christmas, and I hope you will join me and those shepherds, and let's go tell it on the mountain. The time to tell the world about Jesus is now. He has come, and he's coming again, and that's good news today. Christmas forever.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus. Available now in bookstores, or go online to firstwordsofjesus.com.
What is dementia? Is it the same as Alzheimer's? What is vascular dementia, Lewy body, FTD, TBI, and CTE? If someone has memory loss, does that mean they have dementia? Millions of Americans ask these questions every day. I did too, and I learned. My wife, Ginny, developed dementia. I didn't know what to do or what was coming next. I'm Kevin Jameson, volunteer and president of the Dementia Society of America. I'm excited to offer you a free guide to understanding dementia. It's filled with facts about dementia, care planning, how doctors can help, and ways to keep your brain as healthy as possible. The Dementia Society of America is a national nonprofit, and we're ready to answer your questions. You want to live life to the fullest. I know that. Ginny did too, and I'm confident that we can help. Get your copy of the guide. Go to 1-800-DEMENTIA.org or call 1-800-DEMENTIA. Thank you.
Over the years, you've brought them into your home. You were prescribed opioids after the C-section, when Dad injured his back, when your basketball star tore his ACL. Opioids helped with the pain, and you held on to them just in case. But did you know holding on to unused opioids puts your family at risk? Opioids are powerful pain-reducing prescription medicines, but most people who are prescribed opioids don't finish their prescriptions. So millions of unused opioids are sitting in homes across the country. And tragically, more than 100 Americans die every day from overdoses involving opioids. What can you do to protect your family? Remove the risk of unused opioids from your home. Pills, patches, or syrups in drawers, purses, and cabinets, anywhere they might be hiding. To find out how to dispose of them properly, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Welcome back to Kingdom Pursuits, where we hear how God takes your passion and uses it to build the kingdom. And today we're so blessed, we really are, to have good friends of mine, actually, Pete Berbeles and Jay Peters. Jay is with Jesus Revival Now, and Pete Berbeles does the Horns of Light podcast with me on the Christian Car Guy podcast that we feature usually weekly. So I'm part of his adventures as we continue to go down that road. And we're going to get to them in a second. But first off, we have Laura is in Ohio. She has an answer to my riddle. What horn is the church waiting to hear sound in 2025, Laura?
I'm going to say the ram's horn.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that correct?
You couldn't be more correct. It is. And
that's awesome.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Won't it be cool? I mean, if you wanted to sound it right now, it would be good by me. How about you?
Me too.
If it could happen in 2024, and I would not be heartbroken in one little bit. But yeah, that ram's horn, sometimes called a chauffeur, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a chance to play a chauffeur?
I have not, but our pastor has played it in church before.
Oh, how cool. And
yeah.
Is he good at it?
Yeah, he's pretty good. It seems to be a very difficult instrument to play.
We have a big guy. I'm 6'5", but this guy's probably 6'6". He's huge. And I'm not very heavy. He probably weighs about 265. I weigh about 185. So this is a big guy, and I call him the chauffeurian.
Oh, yeah.
So and we do these boot camps here in North Carolina, and and so whenever we are, starting a new session, or whenever we go to eat or whatever, he goes out there and plays the chauffeurian, so we can all get ready for the big blast when it comes. And I love the fact that you made reference to the fact that it was a ram's horn, and it does have it will definitely stimulate our ram memory.
Yeah, that's cute.
Well, Laura, where in Ohio are you calling from today?
Perrysburg.
Oh, cool. Well, I am so grateful that you listened to us up there, and you have a happy New Year. Okay.
You too.
God bless. Thank you for calling in. All right, getting back to Pete. Excuse me, I wanted to get back to Jay. So Jay, when I look at your website, like, you guys are doing these boot camps too, and you got all sorts of interesting events that are going on. So what do you got? What are you looking forward to in 2025?
So yeah, the Revival Boot Camp, this will be our 5th annual one that we've done, and that's always a real highlight. By the way, I just happen to have a shofar with me here in my truck. I usually carry it wherever I go.
Oh, good for
we
you.
do the same thing. Yeah, we do the same thing. We usually start our conferences off with the sounding of the shofar, and then we'll end it with that too. It's kind of an opening and a closing, and really a commissioning when we end the conference. But it's a 3-day conference. We have people come in from really all over the world. Typically, we'll have between 12 to 15 speakers for those 3 days. We provide meals for the people that are there and attending, and it's been really a life-changing event. And the reason I really felt compelled to do it is, I believe everybody carries something unique, something that they can contribute to the body of Christ. So what's been beautiful is having people come from other regions that are carrying whatever God has gifted them with, and then being able to bring that to the people that we have in our region. Because just to be pretty honest, it's the region I'm in. It's been a little starving for the message of revival. Things have been changing, but what's been really neat is to be able to have people that are running in revival, that are living this thing out from all the corners of the earth, and to have them come together for 3 days and really pour into our people, pour into myself. It's been a beautiful, beautiful event these past, it'll be 5 years now.
That's awesome. And so, have you got a little nugget that you remember from last year's that really helped you in working with your youth and that kind of thing?
A little nugget from last year. Wow. Like rattling me. So one of the things that I guess stood out that I had shared is when you decide to step out, and for those who are hearing things today and and maybe God's really been stirring them, I think one of the things we don't often always anticipate, we have certain fears and things when we step out, but one of the things that's going to happen to you that's going to try and shut you down is right away, as you really put yourself out there, as you put basically a target on your back, that you're going to live a life of revival. You're going to live a life of fire. You're going to live boldly. Immediately, there's going to be much that's going to come against you, the world, your own flesh, and the devil. And one of the things that I had shared from that time, from last year, is to never ring the bell. And what I was referring to is in the Navy SEALs, when they do their, if you've heard of like their Hell Week, it's a very intense week that the Navy SEALs are trained. And throughout that week, they're pushing you to your limits. And the reason they're doing that is they want to see, if you can survive this, then we can trust you when we put you out in a real war, we put you out in a real battle. But during that training, in the center of the camp is a bell. And throughout that week, they are going to test you, and they're going to tell you, when things are really going hard, hey, all you got to do is ring that bell. You ring that bell, you can walk out of here, get some hot chocolate, you can relax, all the pressure's off. Just ring that bell. And I think as it relates to our walk before the Lord, I think the devil's always there and the world's always there just to say, come on, just ring the bell. It'll be easier. You don't have to go through all this. You don't have to, to endure this. You don't have to go through this persecution. All you got to do is ring that bell. And we have to be determined, I believe, like Paul was in Acts 26. He said he was not disobedient to that heavenly vision. And we can look at Paul's life where many, many times, you're being stoned, beaten, everything that Paul went through, persecuted by the church, the Judaizers, everything he was facing, it would have been so easy for him to give up. But he said you look in then 2 Timothy, that he finished his course. He had fought the good fight. And I want to encourage everybody listening today, as you might be stirred and wanting to step out, realize everything's going to come against you, but Jesus is worth it. Don't ring the bell. Keep going. Fulfill all that the Lord has called you to be in this life.
And so, Peter, what Jay says, certainly is stirring, and I can think of lots of examples from the Bible. And certainly it's a matter of faith, right? That to believe that you have what it takes. You believe that Jesus is in you to give you what it takes, and all those kind of things. But I can't help but think of somebody that when God calls you to some of those adventures, and you go to your wife thinking there's no way this is going to happen. Sometimes, right? You ran up against all sorts of things, but you carried on.
Yeah, it was for me, I didn't want to tell my wife when the Lord had said to kind of go to Petra, Jordan. And I was just keeping that in all day. And finally, she turned to me and said, "What's wrong?" Because we were visiting our daughter at Sanford, which is kind of where your daughter also went to school.
Yeah, it's really wild.
And then I told her, and because she was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And then she was like, "I told you were going to the Middle East this year," kind of a thing. And somebody come and spoke, and it ended up, it just ended up being that she ended up being for it. I had no grid for that. So to kind of think that, she might think I'm crazy or whatever. And I called a friend, and his initial response was kind of "you're nuts," and so. But what's really cool, I don't know, kind of going along with what Jay said, if he's willing to share, but he really had that moment in his life where God said, you know, is this, are you going to quit, kind of a thing. And that's kind of he's had to pursue through a lot of personal adversity, and I don't know how much he's willing to share, but that moment seemed to be a defining trajectory moment where things kind of really ramped up.
All right, Jay, you're set up.
Yeah. Wow.
You don't have to.
No. I'm glad to share it because I've shared it before in different settings. And I'll try and summarize this, but essentially, you know, got radically saved at the age of 16 out of drugs and addiction, and just really wanting to end it all, struggling with suicide, and had an intervention of the Lord, radically saved, on fire. You know, went to Bible college, went to Moody, graduated from Christian Life College, you know, just pursuing, you know, kingdom pursuits, right?
Right.
Get married, doing youth ministry, you know, going. And, but kind of what happened, and, you know, it's a slow fade, so to speak, but I think really just what I'll call churchianity, just got too comfortable. You know, we're doing ministry and things are happening, and, you know, you're meeting with the kids.
Oh, Jay, I hate to jump in right in the middle of churchianity.
No problem.
But we're excited to pick it up on the other side of it. Yes, we got to go to a break. When we come back, we got more on, you know, Pete's opportunity to have a testimony as a test is coming, I think. And we're going to hear, Jay's testimony. When we come back, we're going to hear a lot more. Stay tuned.
My name is Judy Teeter, and I'm the mother of 3 boys. My youngest, Joe, was a great kid. He loved sports, music, and his youth group. One day, Joe asked me to drive him to an after-school event, which was about a mile from our home. I was driving through a green light when a car in cross traffic ran a red light and drove right into the side of our car, killing Joe. The driver was talking on her phone, so she never even saw the red light. She was so absorbed in her phone call. Before the crash, I didn't realize just talking on a cell phone while driving was so dangerous. Now it's something I think about every day. According to the National Safety Council, about 1 in 4 car crashes involves a cell phone. Hands-free is no safer. When you're behind the wheel, put away your phone. For Joe and for the thousands of needless deaths every year, remember, there is no safe way to talk on a cell phone while driving. Find out more at nsc.org/callskill.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear. Call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. You get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container, because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
My dad, he's a double amputee, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. To me, a hero is someone who fights for our country and freedom. My dad is a hero. Homes for Our Troops built this house, and it's basically made for him. My dad can get through the wide doorways. When he is making our lunch, he can reach anything we need. He'll help me build tiny projects. Life is good here. Without Homes for Our Troops, we'd be living in a home that didn't have all these features that helped him.
Homes for Our Troops builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post-9/11 veterans and enables them to rebuild their lives.
If they get a new house like this one, it'll help them do normal life. My dad's not just a hero, he's my hero.
Join our mission at hfotusa.org.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore, every heart that is broken.
The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The righteous person may have many troubles, but God is there every time. Your truth for today.
Welcome back to Kingdom Pursuits, where we hear how God takes your passion and uses it to build the kingdom. So blessed to have with us today Pete Berbalese and Jay Peters. Jay is with Jesus Revival Now USA, and Pete, of course, with Horns of Light Adventures we do on a Christian Car Guy Show podcast when we left. But before I get back to Jay's story, I want to remind everybody, if you go to kingdompursuits.com, you're going to see right there on the front page, Jay's ministry. He's got an awesome Facebook page, which is Jesus Revival Now. You could either just go Jay Peters, Jesus Revival Now, or either one. And then he's got a website, if I'm not mistaken, is it, and these are all linked at kingdompursuits.com, by the way. So you can just go there and get there. But Jay, your website is it JesusIllinois.com?
We have a couple domains. It's JesusIllinois.com, kind of our home base, our home mission, and then it's also JesusRevivalNow.com. So either one will take you to our website.
Yeah. So if you want to go to that boot camp coming up in 2025, those kind of things, it's all there either at kingdompursuits.com or Jesus Revival Now, or again on Facebook. This is amazing stuff. And so when we left our hero, Jay, he was in the middle of churchianity.
Yes, not a good place to be, because it's kind of the Revelation 2 and 3 where you're comfortable, but yet you've lost your first love. You're living lukewarm. Most people that probably would have looked at my life wouldn't necessarily think that. They would think, oh, you and your wife, you're good Christians, you're sharing the gospel all the time. But I began to really be stirred in my heart, knowing that there's something more, and didn't realize how that was, what was going to take place to kind of bring me to that place of, I'll just say, a place of desperation. God takes us to the end of ourselves, and we need to stay there. So what happened with my wife and I is, my daughter, who was 16 at the time, came to us one night and said that she'd been molested for the past 2 years. And as it turned out, it was actually somebody who was at the church. And a bit of a long story short, obviously something like that, you face that, it just takes the wind out of your sails. The church really didn't want to, the church we were at the time, we'd been for a long time, really didn't want to do anything with that. We had gotten the authorities involved. Again, a bit of a long story, but essentially we were not able to have that played out in a court. So it was just a huge devastating thing you had to work through, and we ended up having to leave the church we'd been at all these years, working through with my daughter, with our family. It was one of the most difficult times that we ever went through as a family. And along with that, we began to go to another church and just really kind of step back. We were teaching at a Christian school, but we really stepped back from any ministry other than that, to be restored, to kind of process everything. And about 2 years after that, my oldest daughter had come to us and just really shared. Again, I'm going to make it, make it a little bit shorter, but essentially she was just going to go and do her own thing, not following the Lord. And it was like you're down, you've had the wind knocked out of you, and then it's like you're down and you feel like you've been kicked. So my wife and I'll never forget the night. We had gone with my daughter, had gone out to eat, and then she had shared that news with us. We're driving back home, just my wife and I. And it's one of those drives where you can hear you can hear a pin drop. Neither one of us are saying anything. We're just, it's just hard. And on the way home, I realized, well, I'm really low on gas. I need to stop at the gas station. So I stopped there. I get out of the vehicle. There's a guy next to me. He's pumping gas, and per usual, I would strike up a conversation. I would share the gospel as you feel the Lord prompting you and the Holy Spirit. And that night, I felt that, but I remember in my mind, I'm telling the Lord, no, I'm done. And it was like a lightning bolt. And I felt this voice of the Lord that was saying, is that what it's going to take to stop you? And it was just, it hit me so hard when I felt the reality of that. Like this, all these things that had happened, this was going to be the thing that was going to shut me down and make me not really be who God has called me to be. It was just, I'm explaining it, but it happened in an instant. And I remember saying in my mind, no, like this resolve within me, no. And I turned to the guy, I shared the gospel with him. I got back in the car. I looked at my wife. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. From now on, every time that, the enemy comes against us, something happens, we get, try to be discouraged. We're not going to shrink back. We're actually going to use that as fuel to press forward. So if we get hit once, we hit 10 times back. I said, that's how we're going to go forward. And I remember she just looked at me and she was like, okay.
Wow.
And we drove home. And it wasn't like things changed overnight. But all of a sudden, it's like the Titanic slowly turned around. And it was about, after a few months, I'm like, something's happening in the spirit. Something's happening in our lives. Everything began to shift. And then January, I'll never forget, January 1st, essentially the beginning of the new year. Here we are, coming on 2025. But in January, the very beginning, I was challenged. Again, a long story, but I was challenged. I am a filmmaker as well. And I was challenged to do a movie on how the church could reach the LGBT community. And when that came to me, I knew that there was going to be a lot of opposition. I knew this was going to be like, man, I'm going to get people to hate me no matter what I do here. But I really felt like the Lord said, I want you to do this film. And I said yes to that. And what happened in that when saying yes to that, it was like, if you've ever been surfing, it's incredible when that wave picks you up and you're in the ocean. You don't do nothing but hold on. That wave is, it's literally carrying you. And I remember it felt like for the past 30 years doing ministry, I was just paddling out to catch the wave, exerting, it's a lot of work, there's, you're plowing. But I remember when I said yes to doing that film, I felt like finally I hit the wave and I'm on the surfboard. And now, like, I'm just being carried. It was the hardest, easiest thing I've ever done. But I can tell you right now, Robbie, here we are, 2025. It's like that when I got on that surfboard, it hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
Like, the momentum is still there. It increases. My wife and I, our lives were completely changed around. And that's how it all started when we resolved that, no, we're just going to, everything that comes against us, that's going to be the fuel to lead us forward. The greater the resistance, the greater the breakthrough. And that was a turning point.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. And so the movie itself, is that something people can go see, or is that available?
Yeah, yes. So actually right now it is, I have it on YouTube. I want to say if you go to our site, you can, it's like under media. I think, I'm not positive. But if you go to our YouTube channel, Jesus Revival Now. Oh, I hear the commercial.
Yeah, it's
coming.
Jesus Revival Now once again. And what's the name of the movie?
It's called Opening the Door homosexuality and the church.
There you go. Opening the Door, Homosexuality in the Church. Right there on YouTube. I bet pretty easy to find. I'll be anxious to see that myself. We'll be right back with more with Pete and Jay. Stay tuned.
To the consumer, Christmas Day is the end. To the believer, it's only the beginning.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus.
'Twas the day after Christmas, and all through the world the shepherds were spreading his glorious word. Good news of the Savior in the fullness of time, born in a manger to redeem mankind. The Prince of Heaven would go to the cross to purchase salvation and ransom the lost. Alive from the grave, the King would emerge in victorious power. He'll one day return. Friends, that's my poem, 'Twas the Day After Christmas, and I hope you will join me and those shepherds, and let's go tell it on the mountain. The time to tell the world about Jesus is now. He has come, and he's coming again, and that's good news today. Christmas forever.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus. Available now in bookstores, or go online to firstwordsofjesus.com.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
I spent a lot of time in the garage, but even more time in the rain and mud. In 95, I helped tow your moving trailer. And in 09, it was sparks from me, your chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wild.
Welcome back to Kingdom Pursuits, where we hear how God takes your passion and uses it to build the kingdom. What a blessing it has been today to hear more of Jay Peters' story. He's with Jesus Revival Now, USA, and Pete Burbleys with Horns of Light Adventures. And so, you know, I couldn't help but note, Pete, as I was listening to Jay's story and thinking about the whole idea of don't ring the bell. He certainly made that point well, but your own life, right? It seemed like Satan used a similar sexual abuse out of the church to kind of try to ring your bell, but it didn't work.
Yeah, and that was kind of really one interesting thing was when Jay and I connected, you know, we've had similar stories and similar trials that we've had to walk through. And you know, I would just say that whatever dark path that, you know, you may have to walk through that valley of the shadow of death moment, that inevitably we all face at some point in time in our life. Just don't give up on the Lord. He's faithful, and a new day will come. And I would just encourage people that may be in that time, especially during this holiday season. You know, sometimes all you could do is just let the Lord know how much you love him, and sometimes that's all you can give. And but I would just encourage people, if that's all you can give that to the Lord, and stay connected to other believers during that time. Something that I didn't necessarily do the greatest job of, but fellowship's really important, and just you know, appreciated that connection.
Well, again, to point the question more directly, apparently.
Sorry,
it's all right. It's all right. From my perspective, you have some really important insight, right? That as you face some, you know, good friends that have been, you know, their daughters had been abused and stuff in the church, that really, you know, set you in a different kind of path, church-wise and things like that. But and you kept hearing those church leaders, you know, talk about that, you know, David had sinned and, you know, you got to forgive and da-da-da. Speak to that, because there's a lot of wisdom there that I think the church needs to hear, and here's your opportunity.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right now, in the midst of it, actually here in Kansas City, And so I guess a few things is I would encourage, if you're a victim who's been, most of the time, I won't say most, a lot of the times, the church isn't going to do the right thing. So find yourself a support system. And one way that you can kind of gauge as to how people are going to respond is if you start talking about sexual abuse or sexual sin and they immediately go to David, they're going down the wrong path and they're probably not going to support you. But if they go into the teachings of Paul and his direction that Paul gave to Timothy as far as elders, which by default is pastors and leaders of the church, to those same standards, if that person is willing to see that as the primary truth, then you're finding yourself a good path. And I guess the hardest thing in the midst of it is just you're longing for them to do the right thing and they don't. And that's the inconsistency. I mean, it's one thing to go through the abuse and those types of scenarios, but you expect, especially leaders and elders, to do the right thing. And oftentimes they don't. And for me, it was in the one case that we had to deal with when we kind of got that call and, you know, there's a scandal going on in the church, is I just kept pushing. I pushed to the board. The board didn't want to hear it. Then I got in touch with Focus on the Family. And the final path would have been to go to the state's attorney. And in my situation, I didn't take that path. And maybe I should have. I don't know that the state's attorney would have really done anything in this scenario. But in the end, that same person went on to continue kind of an abusive clergy pattern, although I don't know if he felt sexually, but it ended up kind of destroying another church and hurting good friends. And typically, you know, if a person's doing something, willing to cross that line once to gratify a need for pleasure, they're going to keep crossing that line. So by standing up and by speaking out and by doing the right thing, you have the opportunity to prevent a whole multitude of sins, others from being abused. And, you know, there's that one verse that says, if you're able to turn a person, you cover over a multitude of sins. And that really is the case, especially in this area, because it not only, you know, that person, God help restore that person who has gone through that abuse. And there's also just the church body as a whole that's so impacted by these types of scenarios. So if you're a church, if you're a board, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Don't restore and use David as an example. He's a king. It'd be like putting President Trump in the same guidelines as a pastor, and that's just
wow.
ridiculous.
We gotta end this. It's been so spectacular to have you guys. Jay Peters again with Revival USA, and that feature film is easy enough to find on YouTube. Just found it, Opening the Door, Homosexuality in the Church feature film. It's time to talk is what the whole thing says. But again, if you just go, you know, Opening the Door, Homosexuality in the Church, easy enough to find. And again, Jesus Revival Now USA, and of course Pete Burblees is on the Christian Car Guy podcast. Easy enough to contact them. And again, Jay's got that big Jesus, Revival boot camp coming up, so you can get all that done at kingdompursuits.com. Right now, I just thank you so much for listening to the Truth Network. I thank you guys for being on with me today.